Have you ever stopped to think if the way an AI, say, learns from a classic painting or a number one song is really all that different from how you get inspired by them?
It's a fascinating question, isn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. And today, we're diving right into that. It's a really crucial debate happening right now at the crossroads of AI and copyright law. We're focusing on this idea, this argument that suggests AI training on creative stuff is, well, functionally equivalent to how humans learn and get inspired.
That's the core of it. Yeah, this deep dive is all about navigating that tricky legal and, ethical territory around using copyrighted works to train AI models.
Right.
Our main source material today, it's excerpts from a report called AI Training and Copyright Law, and it really unpacks this whole functional equivalence thing.
Okay.
It basically asks, if we're okay with humans learning from copyrighted work without it being infringement, then maybe we need to look at AI training through a similar lens.
So for you listening, what this means is getting a much clearer picture of this pretty complex issue. We think you'll find some surprising ideas about learning, about creativity itself, and just a totally fresh perspective on what AI means for copyright. And we're definitely going to look at both sides, the arguments for and against this functional equivalence idea. I want to make sure you get the whole picture.
A balanced view. Yeah.
Okay, so first things first, let's just lay some groundwork. Copyright in the US, what are the absolute must-knows?
Sure. So fundamentally, U.S. copyright law, it's laid out in the Copyright Act, gives creators certain exclusive rights over their original works.
Like what kind of rights?
Think of it as a package deal.
Yeah.
The right to make copies, the right to sell or distribute those copies, perform the work publicly, display it, and really key here, the right to create derivative works, new stuff based on the original.
Gotcha. Derivative works. That sounds important for AI.
It's crucial. So basically, if you want to do any of those things with someone else's copyrighted creation, you generally need their permission.
Okay, makes sense. Create something, you control it. So where does infringement come in?
Infringement is just using one of those exclusive rights without getting that permission from the owner.
Simple enough.
What, conceptually.
Yeah.
But a key point, especially with AI, which isn't, photocopying things page by page, is this legal standard called substantial similarity.
Ah, right. Substantial similarity. How does that work?
It's what courts look at. Does the new thing capture the sort of core expression, the feel of the original copyrighted work so much that an ordinary person would say, yeah, that looks or sounds like the original?
Okay. So it's not about identical copies necessarily.
Not always, no. It's about capturing the essence.
So tying this back, the big question, training AI on copyrighted stuff, is that using those exclusive rights without permission, is it infringement?
That is the absolute heart of the matter. That's what everyone's debating. But there's another important layer here, a really critical one, exceptions to copyright. And the big one is fair use.
Fair use.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear that term thrown around a lot. What's the gist of it and why does it matter so much here?
Right. So fair use is actually written into the law, Section 107. It basically says, look, sometimes you can use copyrighted material without permission for specific purposes.
Like what?
Things like criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research, uses that are seen as beneficial for society. It's about balancing the creator's rights with the public's interest in accessing and using information.
Okay, a balancing act.
Oh.
And transformative use. That seems to pop up constantly in AI discussions. Where does that fit?
Transformative use is super important, especially with new tech. A use is considered transformative if it doesn't just repackage the original, but adds something new, a new expression, a different meaning, a new message. It changes the original work, gives it a new purpose. And courts really weigh this heavily when deciding if something is fair use.
Ah, okay, I see the link now. So the argument goes, AI looks at all this data, learns patterns, right? And then it makes something new. That new thing has a different purpose than the original painting or song it learned from. So transformative.
Exactly. That's the core argument for fair use in AI training. The purpose isn't to just present the original works, it's to analyze them, to learn statistical patterns, and then to generate novel outputs. A different function altogether.
And that connects back to the functional equivalence idea.
Precisely. The argument is this learning process, this analysis and generation, isn't fundamentally different from how, say, a human musician listens to tons of music, internalizes styles and techniques, and then writes their own original song.
Okay, let's dig into that functional equivalence idea a bit more, because I know there are some strong counter arguments.
Oh, definitely.
One big one is humans have consciousness, emotions, intent when they create AI.
Yeah.
Well, it's just code recognizing patterns, right? Isn't that a fundamental difference?
That's a really common point, yeah. The idea that human creativity is this special spark, consciousness, feeling, deliberate choice that AI just doesn't have. It's seen as just sophisticated mimicry. But the report we look at pushes back a bit. It suggests, if you look at it biologically, human creativity also comes from incredibly complex pattern recognition and association in our brains. Neural networks firing.
So maybe mechanistically it's not that different at the base level, even if one is biology and one is silicon.
That's the provocative idea. The underlying mechanisms of learning from input and generating output might share similarities. And importantly, copyright law tends to focus on the output, the tangible work.
Right, the thing you can see or hear.
Exactly. So if an AI creates something that's, for all intents and purposes, indistinguishable from something a human could create, does the internal state or the ontological status of the creator really matter legally? The report suggests maybe it shouldn't.
That's a challenging thought.
Yeah.
And what about human intent versus AI prompts? The lines seem blurry there too.
They really are. Humans use very specific prompts to guide AI, injecting their intent that way. And honestly, a lot of human creativity is intuitive, almost subconscious, right? Not always a fully articulated plan. So drawing a sharp line is tricky.
Okay, another big pushback.
Yeah.
The scale. Humans get inspired by, I don't know, dozens, maybe hundreds of works. AI can ingest millions, maybe billions. Doesn't that sheer scale change the game?
The scale is definitely staggering, and it's a valid point of concern. People worry that AI can just vacuum up everything and replicate it on demand, unlike imperfect human memory and inspiration.
Yeah.
But again, the way modern generative AI works isn't typically about storing and spinning back exact copies. It's about learning those deep statistical patterns.
To generate new stuff?
To generate new combinations and variations based on those patterns. Actual verbatim replication is often technically difficult or even undesirable for the AI developers. Plus, let's be honest, humans are perfectly capable of deliberate plagiarism, copying things exactly, regardless of how many things they were inspired by.
Good point. And the report mentioned an aesthetic bias. What's that about?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. It's this idea that we tend to look at a human artist who is clearly influenced by others and say, transformative, inspired. But if an AI does something similar, mimics a style effectively, the immediate reaction is often, that's theft.
So we judge based on who is doing the mimicking, not just the act itself.
Potentially, yeah. The report suggests this bias might be at play. And it also makes the point that copyright law never says only 100 people can be inspired by the Mona Lisa. There's no limit on human inspiration from a work.
Right.
So maybe the concern about AI scale is less about the act of learning and more about fear of, market competition.
Which brings us neatly to the next big counterargument. AI is going to kill creative jobs. It'll just flood the market with cheap content, and human creators won't be able to compete.
That's a huge anxiety, and it's understandable. AI can generate content that competes with human-made work. There's no denying that potential disruption. But history shows us similar anxieties came up with photography replacing portrait painters or synthesizers replacing session musicians. Technology always disrupts creative industries.
True.
And the report emphasizes that copyright's goal, historically, was to encourage creation and the progress of arts and science, not necessarily to protect specific jobs from technological change. It's a subtle but important distinction.
So the argument is, if AI can do it cheaper or faster, that's just progress. Even if it hurts some creators financially.
That's the tough implication, yeah. And the report raises another point. Why hold AI to a higher standard? Human artists constantly learn from and build upon each other's work, often without direct compensation to every single influence. Should AI operate under fundamentally different rules just because it's technology?
That's a good question. What about the idea of just strengthening copyright, making the rules stricter to protect creators in the digital age, especially against AI?
That's definitely a proposal you hear. Let's extend copyright terms, narrow fair use, make licensing mandatory, etc.
But the report isn't convinced.
It's skeptical. It points to studies suggesting that just making copyright terms longer doesn't really lead to more creativity or innovation. It often just benefits large corporations holding massive back catalogs.
The Disneys of the world.
Right. And the report notes a certain irony, or maybe hypocrisy, where some entities that built huge businesses using works that were in the public domain are now arguing for much stricter rules that would limit others.
I see. And it comes back to that basic idea.
Yeah, that humans don't need permission just to learn from the world around them, including copyrighted works. Why should AI be different in that fundamental respect?
Okay, another angle. Power dynamics. Huge AI companies, individual creators. Isn't there a massive imbalance that needs addressing? Don't creators need protection from these tech giants?
The power imbalance is definitely real, no question. Big tech has enormous resources. But the report argues this isn't solely an AI problem.
Meaning?
Meaning power imbalances and exploitation of creators existed in copyright long before generative AI became mainstream. Think of unfair record deals or publishing contracts.
Okay, so AI might exacerbate it, but it didn't create it.
Exactly. And counterintuitively, perhaps, AI tools could also empower individual creators, giving them capabilities they couldn't afford before. So, the report suggests fixing the power imbalance might require broader reforms, not just rules aimed narrowly at AI. Systemic change.
Got it. And the last counterargument seems to be just uncertainty. Nobody really knows how fair use applies here. It's legally murky. Isn't that a problem?
It is murky, that's true. There isn't a Supreme Court case saying AI training is fair use, or it isn't. But the report argues we're not totally in the dark.
How so?
It points to precedents, like the Google Books case. Remember that. Google scanned millions of books to create a searchable index. Courts found that was a transformative fair use because the purpose indexing was different from the original purpose of the book's reading.
Okay, so analyzing for non-expressive purposes can be fair use.
Right. And the argument is that AI training, aimed at learning patterns to generate new things, is arguably similar. It's a non-expressive analysis leading to a transformative outcome.
But it feels different, maybe.
It does feel different to some. But the report warns against what it calls circular reasoning, basically, assuming AI must be infringing unless proven otherwise. While we automatically assume humans learning is fine, it suggests we should apply the principles consistently. And historically, almost every new copying or analytical technology faced similar copyright questions initially.
Okay, that makes sense. To really get this, maybe we should step back. What was the original point of copyright? Why was it even invented?
Good question. Going back to the roots helps. The report mentions the Statute of Anne from 1710 in England, generally seen as the first real copyright law.
And its goal?
Its stated goal was literally for the encouragement of learning. It shifted rights to authors, away from just printers, but framed it as a way to promote knowledge and culture. The idea was to give creators control for a limited time as an incentive, but ultimately for those works to benefit the public.
For learning, for the public good.
Okay.
In the U.S. Constitution.
Similar idea. The Constitution's copyright clause lets Congress grant authors exclusive rights for limited times, specifically to promote the progress of science and useful arts.
Promote the progress, not just reward authors forever.
Exactly. The report argues this shows a utilitarian basis for copyright in the U.S. It's a tool designed to achieve a public benefit progress, innovation. The author's monopoly is the means, not the ultimate end.
And the suggestion is maybe we've lost sight of that balance, with super long copyright terms now.
That's the implication. That current law, with terms lasting decades after the creator's death, might actually hinder that progress by keeping things locked up for too long, potentially straying from the original constitutional purpose.
Okay, so bringing it all back to AI training as this kind of transformative learning, how does that original intent fit in?
Well, the central argument gains force, doesn't it? If the goal is progress and learning, and AI training is fundamentally a learning process, absorbing information, identifying patterns, developing the capacity to create new things,
then maybe restricting that learning goes against the original spirit.
That's the argument. Both humans and AI internalize information from existing works to generate something novel, something derivative or inspired, but hopefully not just a copy. The process, functionally, is similar.
Even with the difference in scale.
The argument is that the scale doesn't change the fundamental nature of the act in a copyright context. If learning from one book is okay, why is learning from a million books fundamentally different, legally speaking, if the purpose remains transformative learning rather than replication?
It's a really compelling way to frame it. So thinking about the future, what are the potential economic waves from this, and where could copyright law actually go?
Economically, it's going to be huge. We'll likely see shifts. Some creative jobs might decline, but new ones related to AI prompting, editing AI output, developing AI tools will emerge. New markets will definitely be created. Projections show generative AI adding trillions to the global economy eventually.
Wow. And policy responses. What might change?
We could see reforms, maybe shortening copyright terms, as discussed, or explicitly writing AI training into fair use exceptions. Another option is compulsory licensing. AI companies pay a set fee to use copyrighted works for training.
Like how radio stations pay for music.
Sort of, yeah. Standardized system. Governments in the UK, the US Copyright Office, they're all actively looking into this, holding consultations.
Any more radical ideas out there?
Oh, sure. People talk about things like universal basic income, specifically for artists displaced by AI, or moving towards more open source models for creative content and AI development. Big shifts.
And wrapping up, there are some deep philosophical questions tangled up in all this too, right? About what creativity even is.
Absolutely. It forces us to ask, what makes something creative? Is it just originality? Does it require conscious intent? Does human experience play an irreplaceable role? Can an AI, without consciousness or feelings as we understand them, truly be creative?
That's a debate for the ages.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it ties into how much we as a society value art based on its human origin. That value might be challenged or need rethinking as AI becomes more capable in creative domains.
Okay, so let's try and boil this down one last time for everyone listening. The key takeaway from this deep dive seems to be this powerful argument. AI training has these fundamental functional similarities to human learning, and that really pushes us to reconsider traditional copyright views.
Exactly, which leaves us with this final thought for you to chew on. If learning is, a basic human right, and AI learning seems to mirror ours in significant ways, should our laws change to reflect that?
Or the differences, consciousness, scale, intent, whatever, is still so fundamental that we need different rules for AI under copyright.
Right. What does this all mean for the future of creativity itself? And how do we decide what has value?
Lots to think about.
Definitely. We really encourage you to keep exploring these issues: AI ethics, copyright reform, the philosophy of creativity. Think about the economic shifts, the societal changes we touched on.
Because the creative world is definitely changing, and AI is a massive part of that ongoing story.